Good morning. This is Dr. Matthew Dunn, host of the Future of Email Marketing, and I'm delighted to have what I think is the first transatlantic guest, Kate Barrett, the founder and director of eFocus Marketing. Kate, welcome and good afternoon where you are.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's early for you, Matt, but it's later on in the day for me. So I'm honored to be your first transatlantic guest. That's a hard one to
There you
say.
go. That's awesome. Hey, fill people in a little bit on your company and your customers for starters.
Absolutely. So I'm the founder of eFocus Marketing, and we are a specialist email marketing agency helping brands to use email more intelligently. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book called Intelligence Email Marketing
Yeah.
Isn't Dead, the way you're using it is. And in all honesty, that kind of encompasses our ethos in the business as
Yeah.
well. And it's really getting people to think about how they best serve their customers in order to meet their objectives, but
Hmm.
putting the customer at the heart of everything. So we've been going since 2013, and I'm lucky enough to have worked with some amazing brands in my career generally, and certainly with the business as well over the last few years. So big brands over my time, from Marks and Spencer, Nissan, Adidas, all the way through to entrepreneurs getting started and everyone in between, and
Cover the span.
helping
Huh?
solve those challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things that always strikes me about when I get a chance to talk with someone at an email marketing agency is that one of the big initial lifts in the specialty that you've got is getting people to understand that just because they send email doesn't mean they're experts at email.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. It's a lot harder than just hitting the send button.
Well, it is, but okay, I'll play dumb. Why? Go into that.
Good question. For me, it's really that understanding of why you're sending that email. So many people send emails out because they think they should, just to get something out there. And in all
Yeah,
honesty,
yeah,
if it's not interesting and relevant and valuable, it's more damaging just to send anything out there, because you're putting people off. And when they open an email that's not relevant from you,
hmm,
that can impact what you're doing in the future. So you've got to understand, what are your business objectives? What are the needs of your audience, and how do you put that together to send right message, right person, right time? It's so important to do the planning and not just send for the sake of it. Understand why you're sending.
understand why. I was on a Zoom call with one of your countrymen, Della Quist, and he made a comment that just really struck me. He said that there are times that he recognizes that a particular message, the intent is not necessarily to get someone to jump up off the couch or desk chair and do X right now. It's to continue the relationship, to stay in their mind and realize that in the future that message actually was part of why they did get off the couch or up off the desk chair and act. Any comments on that?
I totally agree, and that's unusual with Della's comments. Love Della. Yeah, I honestly, I do agree, and it comes back to knowing your why. There's going to be some emails that you just want people to read, some that you want them to take action on, but there's
Yeah.
also that holistic impact across your marketing. I was dealing with, I had a student on one of my courses. I teach a few different courses,
Oh yeah.
and they were from a pizza chain in the UK, and they have shops on the high street, so restaurants on the high street, but they also do deliveries. And certainly they can't track that direct impact of email through to a purchase in their store most of the time,
Hmm.
because of the online offline issue there.
Hmm.
So for them, what they saw is, when they did pull back on email, because that was the instruction that they were given, they saw an impact on the sales in store. They saw sales go down. And it
Really?
just proves that even if you can't directly attribute a sale through to something,
Mm-hmm.
you've got to have a look at that overall impact. And this is the problem with attribution models nowadays. Most people, certainly clients that I deal with, come to me and they're using last click attribution. It's the easiest to do. We can all link it. What is it that pushed that final action
Yeah.
through to the purchase?
Yeah.
And that's great. And it tells you what that final piece was that pushed them over the line, but it doesn't tell you that they saw a PPC ad, or they saw a Facebook ad, or they saw 3 emails, or they saw all of these other things, banner advertising, tube ad advertising on the trains and things like that on the subway. All of these things have an impact, and we've got to get better in terms of our data and our technology at attributing across different marketing channels. But it's so hard to do, and there's so many different ways to do it.
It is hard, and it seems to me that we as the recipient, we as the people with inboxes that are maybe a little overloaded, we're hitting a stage where we want it to get a bit harder. And I'm taking a sideways jump here to talk about privacy, data control, third-party cookies, that whole shift that we're putting on the brakes, I'd argue, on sure, just keep everything about me, and I'll say yes to everything that says, can I drop an ID on your machine? And isn't that going to make that job, for starters, even more challenging? That correlation job.
Yeah, absolutely. The fact that we need permissions for a lot of these things, I think, firstly, is good, because it means that those people we are sending to are engaged with that. They want it. They've said yes. That underlying best practice of get someone to say yes, that they want whatever that is that you're tracking or sending them, or what have you. But it makes it harder for us as marketers to then have those permissions to be able to do those things, which is what we know that consumers want. But because it's so bogged down in the legality, and how many consumers or end users are going to want to read a legal statement or anything like that? They're not. So again, as marketers, we've got to, if you're an email marketer and you're not part of that conversation about how does that display on the website, have a look at it, try and get involved in that conversation, add your expertise to it, because what we're doing is selling those people on the idea that they need this piece of technology to get the personalization that they want. And we know people want it. We know people engage with personalized content. And certainly from where all of the trends are going, if we think about interactive email and AMP, it's all about making an experience for people. And the more personalized you can make it to speak to somebody, then the better all of these things are going to hit.
Right. And it's the question you ask at the top of that long legal document, the way you frame this privacy personalization boundary, you're going to get the answer. You're going to get the answer based on the way you frame that question. Because you're right, we all want more relevant, which inherently means more time effective, right? It's like, oh, you sent me info about fishing and not about fashion. Why? Because I could really can't even spell fashion, but I like fishing, right? So automatically conserve my time. Interest bar goes up. So if you said, would you be okay with me recognizing your leisure activities? Sure. But then if you say, how do you feel about privacy? Oh, I absolutely want privacy and data control and all that other stuff. Is like, well, which of those do you want there, fella?
Yeah. So we've got to mix that
thousands.
together.
Yes, we do.
We've got to find that way to merge this. And what I think is really interesting, whether we're talking about this and getting somebody to sign up or say, yes, you can track me, or whether we're talking about how we connect with our audience in our emails, we've got to think about all of those psychological aspects of how people work.
Yeah.
So, one really interesting study that I saw, and I'll send you the information about it later, Matt, so maybe we can link to it, but it's about breaking people from their default when they're going through a process. So when they're going through a sign-up form, their default is to do nothing. So if you offer them a checkbox that is non-checked, you've probably seen this one before, Matt, then their natural reaction is to do nothing with that and just carry on with the process that they're doing. So if you offer a yes/no option where they have to do something, they have to break their default.
Yeah,
They can
that's
still
interesting.
choose no,
Yeah.
but they have to break the default to actually think about it. You can see your conversions to opt-in increase. So again, just these small tweaks to really think about what is that process somebody's going through? What are they trying to do at the moment? And if we're stopping them from doing that, how do we make it as easy and beneficial for them as possible to take the action that we want them to take? That's what we've got to break it down to.
Right.
So think about your audience. What do they want? What do they need? And how can you best present that to them? Because your words really make a difference.
Wow. Yeah, and you're continuing to earn that, that opt-in, that permission. This is one of the things that always strikes me about email, in contrast to a lot of other digital channels. Like, it's a pretty pure play. If you start sending me drivel, there's a point where I'm going to go unsubscribe, and,
Yeah. Or just stop engaging.
or stop engaging, and or
Yeah.
set up a bozo filter that auto send to trash or whatever. Waste your time and effort as well. But you really do have to keep earning that spot in the inbox if you're running an email marketing program. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, this is where it comes back to your strategy. And it comes back to knowing why you're sending the message, which links down into your segmentation strategy. Is this a message that actually needs to go to a wider audience,
Yeah.
or is this something you can go niche?
Yeah.
Not everything has to go niche, not everything has to go to the wider audience. It depends on your objective. So you've got to understand all of these points to be able to connect it together and then speak to the right people with your messaging.
So I would guess that one of the things that your clients end up understanding about the value prop that eFocus and your team bring to the table is tackling that complicated ongoing equation, and getting the feedback loop of what we did last week affects what we're going to do in that decision about send, not send today, segment this group, or not tomorrow. Yes.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we offer the full range of anything email marketing related. So, strategy and helping you work out what that plan is and your why,
Yeah.
implementing it for you, and getting those emails out in your ESP, or actually, helping to train your team on some of these key best practices and getting them up to date. So, we kind of see that process throughout, and it's really important to us to help businesses understand that and bring our knowledge and our passion for email to their knowledge and their passion for their customers, and help them find that right middle point.
Yeah.
And I think, in all of these conversations, we are, I am certainly, I know you are, email through and through. It's my absolute passion, but we also have to recognize that, again, thinking about the customer, the end user, they're not just seeing email, they're seeing every other piece of marketing that's going out. They're speaking to the customer services teams, they're going in store to buy something. And all of those touch points have to start working together. And if they're not currently working together, again, that's something that you guys can do, is think about, what are the social team doing? How can email link in and support that? How can social help email? We've got to connect these channels together, and use them at the times for that person where it makes most sense for that touch point.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's good. You sounds like you've got customers that you've worked with for a fairly long haul as well, because you wouldn't be able to say that without some real experience in the life cycle of a
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have clients that we work with on a one-off project basis if someone needs help on something, but we have a lovely range of clients that we work with on a retainer basis and help them work through that strategy as they go. So as new things come up, how do we adjust to that? Because you can't just have a set strategy that doesn't react to things that are going on. It's not real life.
Yeah.
So you've got to have that reactive. But if we can plan the basics, plan what's that messaging going to be? How is it going to change based on engagement, based on our personas or our segments? So yeah, planning all of that out and actually helping them implement it gives you a lot of thought process around that life cycle. And one thing that I've certainly seen is that whenever I get a client to do an exercise of plotting what they have now, so focusing in on email in this case, and plotting what have they got now that goes around each of the 5 key stages of the life cycle. So acquisition, consideration, purchase and loyalty, purchase, loyalty, and then reactivation coming round.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll find is that there will be a cluster usually of emails that usually in the consideration stage or in the loyalty stage. A lot of customers aren't even collecting emails before the purchase process to allow them that first stage. So if you can identify that, you can start to drill in as to where you can create a much better experience for your audience.
Yeah. And the right one for the stage as well.
Exactly.
Right? Blast me with fake personalization on email number 1. I may go, wait a minute, hang on a second, right?
Yeah.
But if I've been a customer forever and ever, I'm probably guilty of beating this story to death. But there's a retailer here in the U.S. that I have bought a lot of stuff from these guys. I won't say their name. Bought a lot of stuff from these guys well over a decade. They're a place to get outdoor gear and clothing. Great source and less expensive than the REIs of the world. So I really am a loyal customer, and they've got a could be great email program because they send stuff on a steady clip. It's always a sale, so you get used to I'm going to wait for that. But I'm always struck by, I've been buying from you guys for a decade, and you still treat me like I'm one of a zillion in the list. Like there's absolutely no recognition. They know a ton about what I do and don't like from those purchases. None of that's in the email, and I'm just like, what a wasted opportunity.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm so glad you brought this up because putting a strategy together is a challenge for a lot of marketers. But what is a massive challenge is data. And there are so many issues within that, whether it's in different places and you can't get to it, or if it's not accurate data, or you just don't have it.
Yeah.
So, one of my kind of core phrases that I always say to my clients is, you can't do anything with your email marketing if you don't have data. And that starts with obviously getting an opt-in, getting an email address and being able to send to somebody. But it's about understanding them. It's about understanding that there are different types of data that you can pull together to create a picture. Now, whether or not you have a data analyst team or you have artificial intelligence doing it all for you and it's all to the extreme, or if it's just you sitting at your desk trying to figure out what the next best trigger is or what the next best personalization is for an upcoming campaign, if you don't understand your data, you can't drive your strategy forward. There is no strategy in my mind if you don't have data to use. There's only a certain level you can get to. So you've got to think about data that you ask for, so known data, behavioral data, purchase data, contextual data, what device are they opening on? That can help to push what the tactics are and how you run that out. Cultural data for different places around the world and what works around the world, for example. So if you can't pull bits of this together, you're not going to be able to advance your strategy. So again, if you're struggling with strategy, go back to your data, love it, understand it, know where it is, and know the power that it can do for you, because that alone will pop out so many ideas.
Nice. Yeah. And it forces you to realize just how much your marketing, email in this case, is a child of the whole, right? You're not going to get all of that data about all of those folks just from what you're doing in your email platform, whatever the platform may be. I'm curious because you mentioned it, and because we just finished some work in our toolbox for ESPs. We just added, in fact, I don't think I've talked about this before. Cool, this is like an announcement. We just added a tool to that toolbox that goes inside the email editor that does a seemingly simple thing. It actually allows an email marketer to target creative based on the language preference of the recipient. And they don't have to know it in advance.
Nice.
Because the email client actually sends the data of language preference. You can say, here's my hero image for the French market. Here's my hero image for
Yeah.
my Spanish speaking market, and I don't have to know where they are, and I don't have to know that language in advance. So here's where I'm going with that. Aside from sneaking in the we've been working as well pitch.
Excellent.
Um, there's a lot of implicit data in the world that's available, and that's kind of can be part and parcel of what you're doing strategically. Reactions, comments?
Yeah, you've got to understand it though. If you don't have that view of what you might want to be able to pull in, you can't figure out whether or not that might already exist somewhere.
Right.
Again, I see a lot of clients who go, right, so we want this piece of data. We want to know if they're renovating their kitchen, let's say.
Uh-huh.
And what they forget is that yes, you can ask that, and there is absolutely a place for asking those types of questions, but you can look at their behavior on the website. You can look at what they're opening and clicking on in their emails. You can, there's a lot of ways that you can find that data
Yeah.
to pull it into your campaigns without it being that first thing that you thought of. So brainstorm it, find where the data is, and then you can use it to much better use, like being able to change that content dynamically using, I'm guessing, contextual data based on where they're opening the email.
It's actually little known, but there's actually a language preference that's sent in a content request header. It's not even location based.
Even better.
Yeah, even better, even more precise, because
Yeah,
just because I'm sitting in the U.S. doesn't mean I speak English worth a damn, right? I mean, obviously we're separated by
absolutely.
common language.
Yeah,
You being Brit, and all that stuff.
absolutely.
We've touched on content a little bit, and I always like talking about that, because one of my aims in bringing a variety of guests on here is to help businesses understand just how dynamic the leading edge of email is, and just what a range of possibilities there are, despite the fact that it's been around for a long time. You mentioned AMP, and not everybody may be familiar with AMP. Can you expand on that and educate them a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's effectively bringing interactive experiences into your email design. So I saw a great example from McDonald's. Now, I don't know if they were using AMP, because AMP is specifically something that was created by Google to begin with, in kind of their testing platform where anyone can pick it up, and it's kind of that open source platform. So I know a lot of other providers have picked that up now, and hopefully it'll become more widespread with them supporting it. But it's creating those mini website experiences. So the McDonald's example was a carousel that you could flick through in the email. So like you would on a website, but this was
Yeah,
in the email, to different images of the toys that were in their Happy Meal boxes at the time. So it meant that you had that much more information in a
yeah,
much shorter
yeah,
space within your email.
yeah.
But it added to the experience. It helped me to understand what was part of that collection that they had. So they used it in a way that helped my experience to deliver that information that I needed to know. And it was a great example of it. But, AMP can be used for completing forms in your email. I believe that there are some tests going on with actually purchasing directly from the email. It really allows you to bring it to life, so you can deliver more within the email without them necessarily having to click through, which is actually
Yeah.
the opposite of what we've always done. We've always said, right, we've got to get them as a shop window and then click through for more information. And this is turning that on its head a little bit,
It is.
using technology, using design to let them navigate within the email as well.
It is. And quick sidebar. I mean, AMP is not an email standard. AMP is a Google Gmail standard. And when Microsoft jumped off the AMP bandwagon a month ago, I think that put a bullet in between AMP size as an email standard. So my frank expectation is that there's a high risk of AMP dying. For technical reasons, I'd be fine with that. For uh, improvement of the medium reasons, I'd like to see an interactive standard to enable that kind of stuff that works on any email client come along. But leave that
Yeah.
aside, despite the fact that it was multiple sentences. Your colleague, and I'm going to guess friend, Miss Kath Pay, um, I was in a conversation or listening to her talk about AMP. I think in one of the webinars that her company does, and she said, "Well, I'm not sure I'm such a fan, because if you're in the middle of an interactive message, the next message is a click away, and the inbox full of messages is right there. Where if I get you to my site, then all of the marketing instrumentation and metrics gathering and like all of the set of controls that I worked my buns off to have on my website are there. And I'm not competing with your email muscle memory of next message, next message, next message. Like we've got a funny boundary condition to play with as email becomes richer. That how much can we get someone to do in a message?
Yep. Yep.
Fighting that very real challenge of, oh man, I got another 180 of these
Yeah.
suckers to get through before my next cup of coffee. Any
Yeah.
reactions?
Yeah. Do you know what? There's a few things there. So in terms of why AMP may not take off, I think, yeah, the pullback by Microsoft is really interesting, but also it's the third MIME type. So in order to actually be able to send out in AMP, your ESP has to support HTML, text, and AMP, and there aren't many doing that. There are some, but it's another adoption ladder, right? In terms of the benefits of it, so you can do interactive email without using AMP. So just by using your HTML cleverly, you can put in some of these options like carousels and things like that. You can actually code them into your emails using your normal email code. So that's brilliant. For me, it comes down to, again, what is your objective? What do you want someone to do? And my kind of pushback on what you said would be, if somebody takes the action that you want them to take in your email, rather than going through onto your website, if they've taken the same action, then surely that's a good thing. Now, obviously, we need to see, as we start to use these pieces of technology, we've got to see, is that the case? Or does it break the journey too much? And again, this is where I come back to, what's your objective? Because if you're using a piece of interactive email design for no reason other than it's cool and funky and you want to use interactive email, it's probably not going to help you. If you're using an interactive function that, again, doesn't align to what you want somebody to do or what you want to achieve, it's not going to help you. But if it's something like the McDonald's example, where it was that quick carousel flip where I could see what these toys were, that was perfect. All of these things are to enhance your message. And when you know what the right message is for that part of your audience, or your audience as a whole, depending on how you're segmenting, then you can use interactive to support that. And I think that's the key. Any design technique, anything that you're doing should be supporting what you want someone to do in your key message. And that's, I think, where the difference will come.
Yeah, no, that's actually, that's a really good distinction. Like we may find that there's this is just occurring to me. We may find that there's a natural sort of boundary. Like I'll do things that are one or two clicks, in the email window, right? But fill in a form, maybe too much. I don't know yet. We don't know yet, but
it'll be the trust as well, right? Will we trust filling in a form in an email? So again, it comes back to psychology. It comes back to, what are people willing to do? And we don't have the data on it yet. So, I certainly haven't, kind of seen that kind of analysis of the interactivity yet. So I think that's going to be really interesting as we move forward.
Yeah, definitely. And with with the installed base of email, which is just, it's unimaginably large. There's billions and billions and billions, literally billions of devices, billions of clients getting billions of messages. Like there's a huge opportunity to do those experiments and learn and start figuring out, what's acceptable, what's not. And I'm going to guess, you've been in this space a lot longer than I have. I'm going to guess that the look and feel of emails, the acceptable level of personalization, the kind of content that works has shifted over time.
Absolutely. As anything does, I think certainly in the beginning it was, how do you know this information about me? This is creepy. And I think we're losing that more now. There is obviously a caveat to that. There is always a way it can be creepy. There's always a way you can take it too far. If we don't think about the people behind it, that's when it gets creepy. Saying, Hey, I saw you visited our store at 10:02 last Tuesday. Here's a picture of you coming in. That's creepy
Right.
because people don't want to be followed. But if you say, hey, we saw you visited our store last week. We hope you had, a great trip. If there was anything else you needed, you come at it from we're following up with you. Does that kind of make sense in terms
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
difference there?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's important.
It, yeah, and we our consumers are getting more. Consumers is a funny word. Users,
People
whatever.
expect it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're all becoming more digitally sophisticated, particularly in the last year,
Yeah.
because we've all made this massive. We realize we live online to a greater extent than maybe we ever expected. I was on a Zoom discussion, and Alan from SellUp made an interesting comment. We were talking about creepy. And I said, well, let me give you an example of creepy. My company does real time content. I said, Alan, I can put an image in an email that shows the street view of where the recipient is. And he went, oh. And then he paused and he said, there's a really smart thing. He said, but if that was on the package notification of where's my package, that might be useful because I might say, oh, wait a minute, that's going to the office. I wanted it delivered
Context.
home, right?
Yeah.
Context. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And geolocation,
Human context.
human context, yeah, and purpose,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
Not
And
just
what's your
opposite.
objective? How does this help in this situation? That's exactly it. And
Yeah.
in terms of those changes, we expect it now. So particularly with new data laws, and if somebody is saying, yes, you can have this information,
Mhm.
they expect you to use it to make their life easier or better. The
Bingo.
way that
Yeah.
people are interacting now is changing. We're using mobile so much more than we were
Yeah.
10 years ago. I don't even know what the time frame is for mobiles now. But
Yeah.
apps, if you think about the way that apps are designed now, email is a fantastic tool. It's the underpin of everything you do in your strategy. But if we don't think about how we can better serve our customers, personalization, design, we're going to get lost in all of the new technology that comes out. Eventually, it will take a long time to fade. Email's not dying, it's not going anywhere.
No, no.
It's the way that you're using it and the people's expectations, and how, if you go onto a website or an app, you can find something so quickly. That's what we're doing with the interactive element, for example. We're bringing some of that in so that we're not just a flat message on the screen, because that's not where technology is going. So step by step, personalization, understanding our audience, getting that right message to them, using some of these design tricks to help them navigate information.
Mhm.
It's the change in the way that people want to interact with things, and that's what we're starting to do. So yeah, it's an exciting time, and I think, like I said, email's not dying. It's not dying anytime soon. It's getting more and more powerful, particularly over the last year.
Yeah.
A lot of people have kind of realized that it's almost like a second coming, I guess, for a lot of people. But we always knew that it
We
was the backbone of everything.
well, and for I agree with I agree with you as well. I'm a fan, but um, and I've pointed this out more than once. Email doesn't have an 800-pound gorilla controlling the channel. You look at social, you look at search. I mean, really, what
Yeah,
happened to the web? I would argue you've got you've got monopolies in a lot of those places, and
yeah,
there isn't a monopoly sitting at the gateway saying, pay the toll, to cross over the bridge in email. We've got an incredible wide ecosystem of companies that make email do what you want it to do as a marketer. I mean, the number of ESPs that you've probably worked
yeah,
with in your career is has got to be something else, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
new ones all the time, and advances and healthy competition between them. But there's not one company sort of parked there going, sorry, we own the inbox. Like, I love the fact that nobody owns the inbox.
To some extent, and I do agree with you in terms of the sending. When it comes to the receiving,
Yes.
Not so much. You've got the dominant big boys, right? You've got Microsoft, you've got
Google.
Gmail, and you've got Oath now in
Yeah.
terms of, the combination of them. And what they say and do goes. And this is the issue, right? They've all got their algorithms behind them as to what they'll let in. If they
Mm,
suddenly go,
you know
you
what?
can't do this.
I'm gonna do a healthy disagree with you on that because, and I
Ooh,
pay a lot of
okay.
attention to this space because of what we do
Yes.
technologically. I mean, the sort of big gorilla on the inbox side looks like Google with Gmail, for
Yeah.
example. But you know what the number one client is for Gmail access? It's not Gmail.
iPhone.
Bingo. And who controls the technical standards of that email
Apple.
client? Apple does, but the funny thing is, there we're out of Google proprietary standards like AMP, and
Yeah.
we're back down to common IETF standards, email standards. Apple says, well, we can only talk to you like an email client,
Yeah.
which kind of saves our bacon from
Yeah.
monopolistic gatekeeper behavior on
Yep.
the inbox. I mean, because
Mm,
I've been worried that might happen, and
yeah.
frankly, I was a little concerned. I have underlying technical reasons why I think AMP is actually weakly constructed, but leave that aside. I was concerned as it started sort of popping up. I'm like, wow, Gmail is a big inbox provider. Heck, I use a G Suite inbox myself, right?
Yeah.
If this sticks, I don't want to see a level of monopolistic control on the inbox that we see on the website. But the fact that the actual end delivery is still fragmented and still in the consumer's control. I can
Yeah.
say, I want to use Apple's client on my iPhone, or I actually use a paid email client, believe it or not. I pay for an email client. I use an email.
Wow.
I know, right? I use an email client called Superhuman that specifically only works with G Suite and Gmail as a back
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
But I asked him the question as I was onboarding on the thing. I asked him the question about AMP support, and I got this funny blank look from the very nice, very well informed young lady who was doing the onboarding. She didn't know what it is. She said, "I'll follow up. I'll get back to you." When she got back to me, she said, "No." And I thought, that's interesting. I'm actually paying
Okay.
for an even higher end Google specific front end client, but they're like, nah. By the way, sidebar: the reason I pay for the client's called Superhuman, and I'm going to give them the pitch here. I didn't think I would pay for an email client because why
Yeah.
would you pay for an email client? I've been at inbox zero for 5 months. I haven't been at inbox zero in the 30 years I've been using email.
Are they just not giving you your emails, or how are you at zero?
No, no. What Superhuman did, and I was blown away. I did it as an experiment. I'm like, yeah, no way they're going to get me inbox zero. Um, the user interface has more to do with what the gaming experience is like
Okay.
than the Outlook and inbox experience. Sorting, filing, unsubscribing, setting to pop back up next week. Those are all keystrokes, and they're all
Mm,
lightning fast. So when
nice.
I zip
Okay.
through my inbox in the morning, it's like ding, 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 ding. Those are all gone. The bar got a whole lot higher for relevance. It's going to make me pause and actually read a message because I can reflex response, say I'm done with that on a
Yeah.
like a 2 second scan, if that,
Yeah.
of a message. Like, and that makes the job for you harder, I would argue.
It does. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And what it means is that from that first point of the relationship, you've got to be delivering value as
Yes,
much as you can.
yes,
Because if they
yes.
open your first couple of emails and go, nope, this isn't for me,
Yeah,
you may have lost them even quicker
yeah,
than we do now.
yeah,
So especially
yeah,
with those fast movements, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
going to be harder. Got to use our data. Got to know our customers. Got to know our strategy.
Well, and this is my hobby horse, but I'd be curious your reaction on it. I think emails got to grow the heck up in terms of the level of visual communication as well. Because if I've got 2 seconds on a message,
Yeah.
you can get 600 times as much information to me with a visual, and I will never get through reading because we process
Yes.
faster.
Yes. Yeah, there's, I think, again, there's the left brain, right brain, right? Some people respond better to visuals, some people respond better to wording and facts. And I think
That
with the,
that's true in terms of process. That's true in terms of preference, but in terms of
yeah,
processing, we're actually
yeah,
all visual first because of how the brain is wired.
yeah. And again, until we have that point where all images are turned on in email, even when we've got no internet signal, those images can be downloaded on our mobiles. Because the
Mhm.
trouble is, if you're in either of those situations and your images are off, you've then lost your key message. So in
You
terms
know,
of the functionality, we still have to think about that a lot.
I'm not sorry. I don't buy. I don't buy. I don't. I seriously, I don't buy
Love
that
it.
argument for two reasons. One, as a
Yeah,
data-driven marketer, if you can't tell me
yeah,
the data about images, about bandwidth available or internet off, we're just talking hypothetically. And two,
yeah.
we're busting our butts to 5G wire the world. How long do we think this is actually going to be a problem? I get internet on an airplane.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. Yeah, until we get there with that increased technology, we still have those issues in terms of rendering and when
You
those
don't.
emails get to
You
people.
don't. You don't think
So
we're there yet?
no,
No.
no, 100% not. Oh, the amount of times I pick up my phone and I've got bad internet connection and it takes so long for it's like the old dial up with the images coming down sometimes. It can be really bad. And
Wow.
certainly in rural areas, and there are, whole swathes of the UK that have really bad internet signals.
Oh,
So,
I thought it was only the U.S. that had crappy bandwidth.
yeah, yeah. No, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
We've got a long way to go yet before those
In-
kind of challenges are
Interesting.
solved, I think. But we're working towards
We're,
it,
we're,
and
we're,
it's finding that balance, right?
yeah, yeah, we are getting there, and I do think, I mean, email's going along for the ride, if you will. But
Yeah,
you look at the rise of bandwidth on a megabit per person. Granted, rural, and I live in the sticks. It took forever to get high speed out here, but you know that keeps going up. We're at the point of talking about internet access as a fundamental human right, like, which I'm a
yeah,
fan of. But
yeah,
it means more and more we're going to be working on the assumption that our digital channel to those customers that we're
yeah.
trying to think through strategically is capable of rich, AMP,
Yeah.
interactive, smart, multi-line.
Exactly.
And email was architected when none of that when none of
Yeah,
that was true, when the pipe was teeny
exactly.
tiny.
Love it.
And we're still doing fairly modest things, to my mind. We're still doing
Yep,
fairly modest things with email compared to what you see done with apps, with websites, right? And maybe
exactly.
that's a benefit to the channel. Maybe it's a challenge. I think there's an opportunity to make email richer and more interesting. I don't know whether we'll really advance the standards, the common standards of
Yeah.
email much again. I yeah, I just
No,
don't know. Like,
it takes a lot to push that rock up the hill, I think. Yeah.
we're dealing with close to 20-year-old standards now. Like, you and I are
Exactly.
working on a
Yeah.
20-year-old standards, like, common ground. And we
Yeah.
go, you know what? We're still doing new stuff with this, so it's okay. Maybe we don't need to change that very much. Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know. And
it will
maybe the
get
fact,
there. It just takes a while, but step by step,
yeah, yeah,
if you just think back over the last 5 years, the importance of data and the technology we have to look at that data has come on so much.
yeah,
I think, yeah, we're going to see that continuing.
yeah. And we're gonna start to we'll have to even more earn that data and the
Yes.
rights to that data
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, yeah, it's good. We're not done yet, kids.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
let's get slightly off the email thing for a second, although it's important context. So you're in the UK, I'm in the US, and we're still in pandemic mode. And when you and I are talking at this point in time, tell me about things there right now.
Yeah, so we're still in lockdown. We're slowly starting to come out of it. We've got a few dates in the UK that we're working towards. I think the first kind of slight opening up is the end of March. So we've still got a few weeks to go at this point when we're recording. So Yeah, it's same as for everyone, right? You're just living day by day and getting on with things. But for me, I know so many people have struggled during this pandemic, and it's been, such an awful time for people with jobs and things like that. And certainly, as I said at the beginning, I think email has come into its own. For me, it's been a really busy time helping people.
I was
And I've
going
had
to
quite a
ask.
lot of new people, yeah, new customers that are new to email that want to get started, new
Really?
businesses that have got funding over the last year still, so
Yeah.
things are still happening. And people know that they've got to have that digital one-to-one communication, and emails the best way to do that, and then supported by all of their other marketing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been busy, but it's
Good.
so good to be able to help those businesses, navigate the waters at the moment, and get something in place that helps people as well on the end of it.
I was wondering when we started into the various lockdowns and
Mm,
grappling with something that none of us had gone through, and no nations had really gone through in living memory,
yeah.
whether email would sort of pop, because it doesn't have gatekeepers, because it cost effectiveness is more in your control, and because in the long run you as a business end up with the relationship asset, as you build that list, and it looks like email has grown in the last year. Has it in your experience?
Yeah, I'd say so. Like I said, new companies coming through going, right, we've got to get this strategy in place for when we launch our new website, when we, launch the business, those kind of companies, but
Hmm.
also bigger companies realizing, hang on, we've got a massive gap here, and we weren't able to communicate with our customers directly at the beginning. And I think the biggest thing as well, and you were talking about changes in behavior and things earlier, loyalty. Loyalty has been something that I feel has been disruptive massively within
Interesting.
the lockdowns and the pandemic, because I just think that certainly at the beginning there were so many logistical issues, particularly when you think about actual products and getting
Mhm.
things to you. There were so many challenges at the beginning that people had to go to other providers for what they needed. For example, from my side, I shop with a particular supermarket here in the UK. I do every week. It's just one of those things that you do, and I couldn't get a delivery slot with them, so I had to book in with another supermarket provider. Now, for me, what I found was the experience with the new provider wasn't as good as my current provider, so that was great for them. But how many people are switching and going, oh, hang on a
Yeah.
minute,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is, this the same price or maybe a cheaper price, or maybe it's more expensive, but actually the service that you're getting and the understanding and the communication, the customer services is better.
Mhm.
So people have been able to dig into more choices, and it's pushed them outside of their comfort zone. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this settles post pandemic. I know that the way that we work has changed forever. It's going to be a lot more remote working. I think that people have cottoned onto that now, that it
Yeah.
can work.
Yeah.
It's been that proving ground. But for
Yeah.
loyalty,
Yeah.
will people go back to their originals? Will they stay with new ones? Will they be more open to trying new companies because they've had that experience and hopefully had a good experience this time? I think there's going to be a shift there again. And it'll be interesting when we come out of this to see what happens.
And it's exposed, and I mean, you just keyed something really smart right there, which is that we sort of see the whole picture of a business, particularly the whole picture of a business's command of their own data and systems and interactions with us in more stark relief than we maybe did before. But my wife's a chef, and she's a big grocery fan. She loves the produce section, right?
Of
and
course. Yeah.
and the small local organic co-op where she was a staunch loyalist turned on a dime when the pandemic busted out. I was so impressed with them. They're like, "Oh, we need to do curbside delivery and online ordering." Okay, bam, and less than a month later, that was in place. It was like, wow, because if they hadn't, they'd have been toast. but they did
Exactly.
it. And meanwhile, the chain owned by Amazon that's in town, grocery chain, like did not get that much business from our household because the little locals were like, oh, we got to
Yep.
adapt. Bam, we'll adapt.
Yep.
And they could back it with, she'd say, oh wait, this is the wrong rutabaga or whatever, and she'd call, oh look, a human being, oh hi Claire, and they're like,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
they didn't miss a beat, which was remarkable. And I know not every business was able
No.
to do that, but I suspect the ones that are going to flourish coming out of this, one, are not going back, and two, realize that you've got to adapt.
Yeah.
Restaurants definitely got to
Yeah.
be feeling this pain.
Oh,
Any
yeah.
comments on restaurant business? Ugh.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was massive. I loved that some of them were coming out with, here's how to make our food. Here's a recipe
Yeah,
for you.
yeah.
Keep you coming back in, because I know certainly I've had some delivery boxes and things. I had one last week for my husband's birthday from a lovely restaurant in the area, and it was gorgeous and the food was lovely, but I still missed the ambience
Oh,
and the experience of going out. But they kept me interested and they kept me there. And I think for me, again, around loyalty, if you've got new customers since the pandemic started, how are you going to hold on to them when everything goes back to normal? When all the high streets open again, when all the stores open again, how are you going to make sure people still come to you? So you've got a part to play in
mm.
keeping that loyalty and keeping them with you as a business as well. So yeah, definitely think about some strategies around loyalty.
Would it be fair to say that there are some businesses that have figured out how to earn even more loyalty during this phase? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so as
I mean,
well.
the example that you gave there, that's kind of going above and beyond, right? I mean, that's the kind of service that only a small local shop can provide. But the fact that they turned around so quickly on the
Yeah,
technology, which is going
yeah,
to be something that they're not experts in, that they've had to do very quickly,
yeah. I had to do.
they're gonna make you feel special.
Yeah,
And now they've done that through an offline means, in terms of, they're picking up the phone to them or whatever that is. But we can do some of that within email as well. For example, how can you
that's true.
take the questions that your customer services team are commonly asked, or your sales team are commonly asked? How do you put that into your emails, deliver the information to somebody when they need it, rather than them having to ask? So we can pick out all of these things that we cherish about services, that we value about services, that we think, wow, they've gone above and beyond here. How can we adapt that into online to give a similar experience? And that's, I find, really interesting.
Similar, and there are aspects of the online experience that can be even better. Is not quite the right word. More informed. Um, you know, back to my wife. We'll use her. Sorry, babe. We'll use her as an example for a minute. Yeah, she should have been a gold star customer at the co-op because we've been loyalists for 20 years, and she'd go there almost every day. Um, but I'm not sure they ever had command of the data about what she bought, how often she was there, etc. Could they? Yeah. Was there a real motive to do it? No. Now that they've got a year's worth of online orders, almost implicitly, like, yeah, they've got the data. Why? Because she sat there and clicked, going to buy this and 6 of those and 20 of these, and oh look, she gets this every week. Oh wow, that's a lot of coffee for a household of 2, right? They know stuff.
Yeah.
They know stuff about us in a data sense now that may not have been accessible in a live checkout grocery situation, and turning that into a feedback loop of informing their marketing to us, their communications with us,
Yeah.
is accessible in a way it wasn't in the old walk through the line randomly scenario.
Exactly. And I think it's really interesting how, if I look at the UK and kind of history of how people are, and you look at the history of a shop, for example, it started off 150 years ago, really personalized. They were doing everything for you in the shop. You couldn't help yourself, all of that. And we've come through that evolution to the point where we've gone so unfaced to things, with these big chains and things like that, that actually I think people are craving that little bit more personality. And Do you know what? Even big businesses can do this again to some extent. So there's a big company in the UK called Marks and Spencer, and they have a loyalty card. So they're collecting data on you whenever you shop in store or online. They're getting all of this together. And what they did was they sent me an email that was, welcome to your local store, kind of the Bromley store, which is near me, had a picture of the manager in it, introducing who the manager of that store was.
Nice.
It had, introductions to different departments and the teams in the different departments. So
Nice.
although it's a big, a multi-million-pound business, they managed to bring that into life a little bit more. And that's really difficult to do. But again, I just think it's, how can we take what people want? They want an experience. They want to feel that they're special. They want to feel that they're heard. They want to feel they're in control. So all of these things, how would you do that in real life?
Yeah.
Think about that and think about how you can take that inspiration to actually put it online and deliver that as well.
That's good advice. That is good advice right there. And that's connecting you back to the manager. That's brilliant, right? Because it's the people there, not just the physical location and stuff like that. It's going to matter to you. Wow. Yeah. All sorts of normal isn't going to be normal, is it? It's going to be new.
Yep. And we have to adapt, and we have to, just again, watch our data. What are our customers telling us with their behavior? What are they doing? How can we adjust what we're sending out? So yeah, it's going to be interesting. As always.
It's going to be interesting. Well, look at this, Kate. I managed to tie you up for almost an entire hour.
We've got chatting.
Oh, it's awesome. Hey, let's finish if you don't mind. We'll finish with a speed round. You ready?
Oh God. Okay, go on. Hit me with it.
It's easy. Dogs, cats, both or neither?
Cats.
Awesome. Name a favorite place.
Hever Castle down in Kent near me. It's gorgeous.
Spell it.
Hever Castle. Hever. Hever Castle. It's you heard of a Henry VIII?
Yeah.
And one of his wives, Anne Boleyn. It's her childhood home, and it's lovely.
That's wonderful. I'm going to look that up the minute we hang up.
Okay,
last one. Favorite book or author? And I know you wrote your own, so we'll put that in the category. But aside from
can I say that one? Favorite book or author? Oh gosh, you've put me on the spot. Okay, instead of favorite book or author, what I'm going to do is the book that's on my desk that I'm going to read next. How's that?
Yeah.
So this one is called Go for No. So it's about getting lots of no's to get you to a yes.
Oh,
so
nice.
There we go. That's what I'm reading right now. Again, it's psychology, right?
Go for No. Who's the author?
The author is Richard Fenton and Andrea Waltz.
Andrea Waltz. I'm jotting that down. Thank you. It's great. It's actually a great title.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's only a thin book. I haven't read it yet, but it's only thin. So should be interesting. There we go.
You'll have to let me know what you think of it when you get done with it.
I will, definitely.
Well, once again, my guest this morning has been Kate Barrett, eFocus Marketing. Kate, thank you so much for the time, and it was such a pleasure to spend it with you.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Have a fantastic day. I'm going to hit stop.